Okay, hi. Welcome to a very special episode of In Conversation with me, Hugo Langton. I'd like to welcome my guest for this evening. It's Peter Loffeld. How are you, Peter?
Thanks, I'm good. Thank you, Hugo.
Nice one. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I just wanted to explain to the people watching that, and also perhaps yourself, that up until this moment, the conversations that I've had with people have been with coaches, football coaches, and managers about one very specific event in their career. We've dissected everything around a certain game. But I thought on this occasion it would be nice to take a slight detour off the main road and talk about something a little bit different, And for that reason, we speak to each other anyway, and I thought it'd be interesting to invite you on because this is more about the other side of football, shall we say? So. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your football background, Peter?
Yeah. As you hear my name, I'm not English. I'm actually Dutch. I live in Norway. Work as a physio in a private clinic. I've been living in Norway for about 15 years. Played football from age 5, 6 up until 20, and then I got bored with that and started studying. And I studied sports, started physiotherapy. Worked in football at all levels of football, almost all levels of football. And now the last 10, 15 years, I've been working in Norway as a physio in a private clinic.
Because I think some people, just to be clear, like when you say the word physio, people associate that with, muscle rub and things like that. But there's also the rehab side to it, which is the side that I'm most interested in our conversation tonight.
Yeah. Mm.
So I think the purpose of the conversation really for me is, firstly, I think it'd be interesting to have to see for football coaches and managers, people like myself, the importance of you guys, and why the communication between medical people and the football coaching staff, as it were, the importance of it. Yeah. It'd be interesting to also maybe highlight some work that you've done in terms of rehabilitation for a player.
Yeah.
But also I think it's really important that, and one of the things I really want to highlight in this conversation is, for example, somebody like me, I'm not educated in medicine or anything like that, or physiotherapy, the body, biology, whatever you want to call it. I'm not educated in it. Yeah. But I think it's very important that as a head coach or a manager, doesn't matter what level you're at, to have an understanding with references perhaps of the work that you do. So I understand what's going on. So it's easy for you to understand the football, but I think it's really important for us guys to understand you guys as well, and we work together.
Yeah.
Okay. So, should we start with the importance, why it's important? So maybe you have some examples, I don't know, or some stories you can tell us, or
about communication. You mean?
Oh, I think just about the importance of the communication, say between you and me, if we're on the same staff. Yeah.
Because it basically is it's easy as it is the better we can communicate about the players on the team, the bigger the chance we have all the players on the pitch, so that you can choose the best players for every game. And research has also shown that the most important thing in a backroom staff, including the head coach, is the communication between the head coach and the rest of the staff. Which basically means then, if we have a meeting together and you say, okay, what players are available for this session or for this game, and I have facts that I can say, okay, this and this player should be training less this in this session because of this and this, then you hired me to do a good job to help you have all the players on the pitch. And then I trust that you make that right decision for the player and, of course, for the team, obviously.
I think just firstly, I think the study that you're referring to is Dr. Jan Ekstrand, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Medical researcher who, just for our viewers, that this guy, Dr. Jan Ekstrand, he, going back 20 odd years or so, he's studied injury within the Champions League and drawn conclusions over time and updated it as it goes. And I think the recent paper was out not long ago, wasn't it? So
that's true, yeah.
But then on the other side, right, and I think I can say this just through experience of talking to physios that I've worked with. It can be very, I imagine it can be very frustrating if you say to, as I said, like I'm the head coach, you're head of my medical staff, and you say to me, this player, he can only do this, this, and this, and or he's not ready to play just yet.
Yeah.
I say to you, nah, I'm going to play him.
Yeah.
I pick him and I start him, and then I start him again, and then he gets injured, and I think it's bad luck. That must be very frustrating for you guys.
That's true. That's a very short answer. That's true.
Yeah.
But what can I do? You're the head coach. And the player is always willing to play. If he has a small niggle, but he should stay away from this session so he can play the next week, or he has a niggle and you should wait this league game so he can play that important Champions League game the week after, or cup game, then maybe you should make another decision. But of course, if you're the head coach, if you want to play him and the player says, yeah, sure, I'm ready to go, then the player always says yes. And then you say, oh, that's easy. I put him in. He's a starter. He's going to play.
But isn't it also ignorant then that, that I think that I'm right and I think you're wrong, and yet you're the expert in that area, and I have no education in it, but I now think that I know more than you.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
all the time.
So look, you've got some examples, I'm sure. Maybe one example of maybe you can talk us through a player that you've worked with, whether recently or in the past or whenever, where from their injury to their return to training and the return to the starting lineup. Because I think that'd be an interesting process to speak about and to understand why things happen leading to that.
Yeah. Before I introduce a player, the important thing to say is that a rehab period, so a total phase from scratch to return to play in game minutes, is often divided in a couple of phases. Some research uses four phases, some use 5, some use 6, but let's take 5 as an example.
Okay.
And from phase 1 is, let's say you have a player with an injury, coming back from an injury after an operation. Most of the time you can't do anything, just do some basic light basic actions or movements, which we can address a little bit later if that's
I think we should address it. So to break down exactly what you mean with regards to basic actions, movement, and I assume football actions.
I will address it in a second.
Okay.
So if a player comes back from an injury, he had an operation, you start from scratch. And after, there are, say, 5 phases, which the final phase is making his first game minutes again after X weeks of rehab. And another important point to make is, of course, what is the starting point of your rehab? The starting point is the game of football. Mm-hmm. So in that football, you have attacking, transitioning, and defending, as most coaches know. And within those 3 team functions, a player makes individual actions. And it is the rehab coach's job to let the player work towards those football actions. Because a football action is basically a basic action, but in a specific context, in a football context. Let's take an example. A player has to do a lot of pressing, which means starting and stopping. For example, in a football context, you would call it pressing, even basic, but you can separate those basic action, the football action, into basic actions. For example, starting and stopping. So if you do sprinting like you do in a pressing situation on the pitch, but with no opponents, no goals, just a pitch, it's called sprinting, and then it's called a basic action. And if the player can't do basic actions, you can divide those basic actions into movements. So you have a football action, for example, pressing, which is then divided into sprinting and stopping. And then that sprinting and stopping is divided into movements. Sprinting, for example, moving your arms, flexing your arms, extending your arms, bending your knees, extending your knee, for example.
Okay.
And in a specific case with a rehab after a injury, for example, a surgery, you often start with movements, which means you let the player learn how to extend his knee and bend his knee. After he can do that, you gradually progress towards basic actions. So lunges, walking, jogging, turning, changes of direction, heading, jumping, landing. Sorry, not heading, that's a football action. But jumping and landing is a part of a heading. So that's what you train in the basic actions. And you build up until he can return to team training, where then the communication part we just discussed comes in, which is very important. Okay, the player is not ready to play 90 minutes. He's definitely not ready to train for 90 minutes at the speed of action the players do in the game, in the training session. So we have to discuss, okay, he can do the warm-up, he can do this, and he can do this. For example, a warm-up, a passing game or a position game, and maybe one block of 11 against 11 or something, depending on the week and depending on the injury and depending how fast we can bring him back. So that is basically the trajectory we want to use. So we want to work from top to bottom. So football action, basic actions, movement. And we then have to divide those movements and basic action into separate phases so we can gradually bring them back towards your team training and finally towards game minutes.
So just to be clear then, just for our viewers as well, right? So if we take the football action as being pressing, so that's within the context of football on a pitch, 11v11, so pressing. The basic action then is sprinting and stopping, for example.
Yes.
And then the movement would be swinging the arms to run, or lifting your knee, that sort of thing.
Correct.
So I see. So hopefully that is clear now. So then, in order to work that way up now, so once a player can do the movement, they can extend their knee. Yeah. For example, then they can go to the basic action, which obviously wouldn't be straight into sprinting. It would be a gradual build up towards sprinting. So it'd be a walk to light jog to running to sprinting, obviously with acceleration and deceleration. Yeah. And then once you're happy with the player's comfortable, there's no discomfort with that, then we can start thinking about putting him into the actual team training.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one important aspect there as well is he's not going from basic action straight into team training. If a player can run in a straight line and he can do some decelerations and we have trained that in rehab, and he can do changes of direction at a certain angle, at a certain speed, he can already be introduced to team training warm-up with certain things.
You were saying about, so just they do a little bit of this and then
we take him out. I do his rehab. The next week or the next session, he can do the same warm-up, but maybe he can do a pass and start with a passing game as a joker, how we call it.
Joker, floater,
a floater, yeah. And the week after we progress that again, and then we progress further and further. So he can do parts of the team training and parts rehab, because the brain part of this is also very important, of course. If the player feels he's part of a team again, maybe his rehab goes faster. You never know.
I always, from personal experience, I'm thinking back now to a player last season who, for me, had quite a long rehab process, and when he returned into to team training and was allowed to take part in a position game, for example, and he was the joker, because we don't want him to be to go around flying into tackles and stuff, But I noticed that his teammates were very, very careful with him. When he had the ball, people didn't go and hunt him down. They'd go and put a little bit of gentle pressure on him, as if I'm going to tackle you, I'm going to try and win the ball from you. So he then performed his football action. But I always just made me think that, because his teammates, they don't go crunching into him and putting him back on the operating table.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So do you have an example of a player that you've recently worked with?
Yeah, recently I had a younger player, 17-year-old, which is actually my neighbor. He was operated upon on his knee for a meniscal injury, which is part of your knee.
Did he do that playing football?
Sorry?
He did, and this was a football injury. It wasn't at
No,
work.
gymnastics at school.
Oh, right. Okay.
So anyway, same injury, same
Yeah.
unfortunate accident in a rotation trauma. So his father called me. We're close here in the neighborhood, so we just Peter. Everybody knows Peter the physio. Just ask him. That's how it goes here. So he asked me if I could help, and that's what I did. So I asked what the injury was. I got the operation report from the surgeon, from them, not from the surgeon, from them. So I knew exactly what was done. So I could prepare a plan for how I should build up his progress, rehab progress. I also know there was 2 games left in which he could play if rehab would go well. Mm-hmm. So we planned for the last 2 games of the season, which would then mean a 10-week rehab process. So what I did then was the coach here doesn't have a team periodization, so that makes it more difficult for me to prepare him back to the team because I don't know what workload they have. So I had to use my instincts and feel, okay, this player can do this and this and this. They play at this level. They do X amount of actions per game. So I had to.
That's playing style comes into it as well. So if they're a pressing team or a counter-attacking team, perhaps, or
and they were just in the middle. They were not high up the pitch. They were not a low block. So they were a normal 17-year-old team with general principles, but not a big playing style as such. Mm-hmm. So we used a 10-week block or period rehab block and divided in phases, which I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So the player, he was young, he was fit. So after the operation, he was recovering quite good. So after a week of movement training, which basically meant bending your knee and doing lunges and doing squats, general strength training in interval form, of course, because football is interval. So we have to prepare him as good as we can, as early as possible, to bring him towards the team. He recovered quite quick. So in phase 2, which means more specific basic action training towards walking, towards jogging, that already was happening in week 2 and 3. So in phase 3, when we went out, he had a treadmill at home, so he could do some small running and jogging on the treadmill. When we saw he could do that, I checked him 2 to 3 times a week. The extensive fluid in his knee was already gone after 2 weeks, with good strength in comparison with the non-injured foot. From there on, we went onto the pitch, and then it went really fast. So he was doing decelerations, accelerations, changes of direction. Of course, gradually build up. It's not everything on the same day. That's not the smart way to go. But you have a certain plan. Okay, accelerations first, and then you jog, and then decelerations, shorter deceleration periods, change of direction with decelerations, and then deceleration with acceleration with jumping, landing, etc., and then decelerate again, and then so everything at a certain moment with a ball. It is more tempting with a ball than without. The pitfall here is, of course, if there is a ball with a football player, the intensity goes up dramatically, because then suddenly they want to score, and you see a small goal, they can score, the speed goes up. So you have to put the brakes on sometimes. Mm-hmm. Of course, it went well, but you know that can happen. I was lucky that we had players here. I could actually do rehab with an official opponent. So there was actually communication, decision-making, and execution at the same time. But that's because if you're a small community and the under 17 is training and the under 16 has a good friend of this player, then he can help you in your session, and that makes it even more realistic. And since he was a winger, and then I asked from the other team, can I have a defender, a fullback? So it was a real realistic way of preparing a player coming back to the game.
So winger versus fullback.
So I asked the fullback, he was a winger, and let's go. So I passed in. I made a pass, or the father of the guy made of the player made a pass into him, so he can receive, turn up, and have a 1v1 on a goal.
Mm.
So that was a part of it, of course.
And then when you get to that stage, now you can almost smell the return to.
Yeah, when are we going to play? I'm fit.
Yeah.
Yes, but but of course, another important thing is he didn't do everything on the same day. We had his team trained twice a week, and they have one game day. So they have 3 football activities a week. So my rehab was 3 activities a week maximum. So we prepared them for exactly the same workload in sessions and games as the team did. That's the only reference I had in regarding to the team.
So now he's back with the team.
Yeah.
The question I have now is that obviously he's not as fit as the team, as his teammates. So,
not at that moment, correct? Yes.
So I think a lot of the way that the people like coaches would look at this is that, well, this guy, all right, he's done his rehab, he's back with the team. We're so pleased that he's back with us. He's an important player, but he's not as fit as the other guys. Now I need to get him fit. So I think a lot of people incorrectly think that this guy needs to train more than his teammates. So they overload him again with a lot of work, and fatigue will obviously come into it.
Correct.
And therefore, if you're putting fatigue upon fatigue upon fatigue because you think this is the guy fitter, then.
And if you do that on a player that is not fit as the rest of the team, the chance of getting a new injury is increasing. So that's what you don't want.
So for the guys watching this, what advice can you give them?
If the player is ready to go back to making game minutes, the game is why we train.
Yeah.
Training is helping you to play games. So if he can make 20 minutes, for example, and he has been training with the team for 2-3 weeks, so he has a certain workload that he has under his belt, so you're sure he can make those 20 minutes or 30 minutes the first game he will be introduced. And because it's his first game after an X amount of weeks, he's
Don't start him.
Don't start him. That's one. But the player's probably nervous, so he's anxious to make. So that's costing energy. His game minutes is going to cost energy. So he probably needs some more recovery time after the game. Maybe you should not increase the workload in the first couple of weeks after his first game minutes, and you have to gradually increase his game minutes. For example, 2 weeks of 30 minutes, 2 weeks of 45, and first increase the game minutes and gradually progress him towards full team training. So just
so we're clear on this as well. So obviously we were talking about the usual traditional thinking is that, okay, this he's been injured, he's come back, he's not as fit as his teammates. We need to get him fit, so he needs to do more, right? Which we've just said is would have some potentially bad consequences on the player. So when he returns into training, because he wouldn't do the same amount as his teammates, he would do less in the training session.
Yeah.
Because he's less fit than those guys.
Yes. So
in that respect, then,
how do you get him fit?
Yeah. So these people who are watching,
as with the team. So let's say the team does 3 blocks of 10 minutes, 11v11, and when the first week, when the player gets back and he's ready to play those blocks of 10 minutes, he does maybe 1 block of football fitness, 11v11, and 2 blocks individually as rehab session. And
that would be return to basic action training.
Yes. So he does football actions with the team, 11v11. Then we take him out again, do the rest of this rehab, 2 blocks of 10 minutes in basic action training. And from there on, we gradually progress week to week, so that what the player can do today, he can increase next week.
Yes.
So he has to do more than himself the week before.
So it's a
not
gradual build up.
Yeah. So you gradually build up the team K minutes. You gradually build up team training. So he's not as fit as the rest of the team. So we gradually build up his K minutes and training minutes.
So now I can't help it. I'm now thinking about team training in pre-season and at the parallels to the two of them, because we're talking about a player who needs a gradual build-up in order to become fit and be able to play football for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm now thinking about pre-season. So maybe this is a nice way of tying it into football coaching as well, in the sense that, all over the world, people go into pre-season training and it's the boot camps. There's lots of running without the ball or non-contextual football running. Double sessions, overloading this and overloading that. More is better.
Yeah.
So it's interesting now that we can maybe draw a comparison between what we've been talking about and
freshness and fitness, as you probably heard before.
Yeah.
Then when players are at the end of the season, they're very fit but low in freshness, and when preseason starts, they're high on freshness and low in fitness. And exactly the same as with this rehab player. He is eager to go. He has a lot of energy, but he is not as fit yet. So we have to keep him fresh and gradually improve his fitness. And the same you can say about preseason. Players they had a holiday for 4 or 6 weeks, and then now with this corona, sometimes, and in your case, a couple of months.
Well, yeah,
even more than that. Yeah. Almost half a year.
It'll be at the moment it will work out as 22 weeks when we return to train since we last played.
That is 5 months. That is scary. So that would be even a lower workload. Maybe even you think about taking out 1 session a week and starting with 1 hour sessions instead of 90-minute sessions. Have a longer rest period between the sessions, so you are at least sure that you're not blowing up hamstrings and groins. But players, they are eager, they want to go, but you want to have them all 22 available the next week.
Of course, I won't be. I remember seeing teams. I remember one specific team a few years ago. They went away somewhere, and they did a lot of training on the Monday. Two or three sessions on the Monday.
Yeah.
2 or 3 sessions on the Tuesday, because the club had paid for them to go to this nice place, and so they have to justify why they're there, I guess. So doing one bit of training in the morning and then resting, and it's probably not what the guy who signs the check wanted to see. So anyway, they did 2 or 3 sessions Monday, 2 or 3 sessions Tuesday. Wednesday, they did a triathlon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Thursday, I remember seeing some footage of the team training with footballs, and the guys couldn't pass to each other. And these are top footballers because they were just so tired.
Yeah.
And then this team about 3-4 weeks later had 2 ACL injuries, and it's classed as bad luck. But
there are many.
I've got to tell you one other one that I saw a few years ago. And this isn't me ridiculing people, by the way. I need to be clear on that, because I think it's important that we use examples of things that have happened, and what the outcomes were. So we can talk objectively and logically. So it's not about us here laughing, going, "Oh, yeah." But there was a team about 3 or 4 years ago who went on a pre-season training camp, and they had a game on the Saturday. And the plan was that the players were to make sure the players were so tired and so fatigued for the Saturday that it would do them good to play tired, because it was good training for them. And again, I think the manager was sacked 2 months later. They were towards the bottom of the league. So there are correlations that can be made between both events.
Yeah, but if the coach would have won 10 games, nobody would have complained.
Of course not.
But if you have 10 injuries but you're still at top of the league, those players are injured and probably not complaining, but they're still in a winning team.
That's true.
That is also true. But if you have low freshness, so players haven't played for a long time, and your fitness levels are here, and you train like here, the gap between what your body can cope at a certain period of time and what you put onto the body in workload in football sessions or whatever sessions, is going to be a huge overload. So you probably can cope for a week or two and then injuries start to happen.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, isn't it? And I feel like, as we do, when we're not on camera having a conversation, we talk about a lot of this stuff private. Yeah. So just to finish up with them, because it's been a very interesting conversation. Okay, is from your side of the fence, as it were, even though we're not on different sides of the fence. What advice would you give to people, coaches or managers like myself, about listening to you guys, and working better with you guys?
Yeah, it's actually very simple. You hire me or us to help you. You hire my knowledge, which I have to explain in your language, so I can help you keep your players on the pitch, increase your chance of winning. We're all in the same boat. We want to win a game. I
think that's the thing that people have to remember. You want to win as much as I do.
Yeah, we're on the same team.
Yeah. And I think I don't know, it's maybe some people forget that, because I just feel some people sometimes they view the medical side as being a pain in the backside, because it's like you're saying you're taking away an important ingredient to the team.
Yeah.
But you're not. You're trying to get this important ingredient back into the mix as quickly as you can.
If you have Messi on your team, would you mind if you had to skip 2 half of sessions and have them ready on Sunday?
Of course not.
So why is Jack Jackson not allowed to do that if he can score you 2 goals on a Sunday?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's just summed it up beautifully at the end there. So, Peter, thank you so much. It's
welcome.
Been an enlightening conversation, and I really, really hope that the people that watch this, maybe start to think a bit differently if they don't already, or they'll start to become more curious.
Yeah.
Because I will reiterate, from my point of view as a head coach or manager, I hope that the people that I work with on the medical side know that I listen to them, and that's what they're there for, and I take their advice. And I think it's really, really important that the communication, and as you said, you're here for a reason. I haven't got your knowledge. I have it's important I have a basic understanding of what you do, but hey, that's your remit. It's not my remit.
The thing that what you have to know is, what is the injury? How long will it take to get him fully fit, or at least back to the team, because then he's still not fully fit? And how can we then progress to keep him fit over a long period of time, and I can use him in games?
But I think that the reference that we've discussed, and we've both, we've spent quite a lot of time elsewhere understanding this as well, about the football action, the basic action, and the movement. I think it's a really, really important reference for someone like myself also to understand. Yeah.
But what we try to do is, of course, if I can help you solve a problem on the pitch in a football situation, a football context, I can give you some pointers which can help a player jump higher or stop earlier because of his pressing mistakes. You think he's a pressing mistake. If it doesn't help, maybe we have to discuss to take him out of the football context to train certain specific things in those basic actions, or if necessary movements, but get him back as soon as possible in that situation so he can learn pressing in better by your coaching.
Brilliant. Finally, if people want to reach out to you, I know you're on Twitter. So if they want to reach out to you to speak with you, or whatever it may be, they're welcome to.
Yeah, they are.
Brilliant. Okay, Peter, again, thank you very much for your time, my friend.
Thank you, Hugo.
Stay safe. And
thank you. Same to you.
Speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.